My name is John Sadowski, and this is my Antigone concept board. So through the usage of colors, lines, and textures, I hope to explain Creon's role in the play and how those elements portray his character. So up here in the top left, this corner represents how Creon's enjoying his power as a ruler, as the newest king of Thebes. He enjoys isolation, riches, things like wine, money. I try to show luxurious food by the plastic food that I bought from Walmart. Yeah, that's kind of the thing, how he enjoys his riches. So the items that I use up there. In terms of lines, I tried to place all of the items on a slant to show that even though he was king, something was just like a little bit off based on how his rule was going so far. And then in terms of color, I chose a yellow background. Typically yellow and gold symbolize things of riches, but also feelings of happiness and joy, but that wasn't technically the case, so that's why I didn't fill in the entire section with yellow. And then in terms of texture, I use like rather blotchy paint, and it's kind of rough. Again, it doesn't fill the whole space, just to show how even though you're king, your riches and stuff aren't going to fill your entire life. So then moving on to the top right section, this corner explains the situation of the burial of Antigone's brother and how Creon approached it. So for this, I used the skewers from that same plastic playset to represent the bodies of Creon and Antigone. And so I used the line of tack to separate Antigone and Creon. I use clear tacks in this case because you can clearly see the divide, but it is actually very strong, which is different from black tacks that I used in the lower section. And I also slanted things the other way to show that things were kind of changing as Creon's rule began to develop, but they were still kind of messed up as time went. So, not my skewer. In terms of color, I use color to show responsibility here. So again, we're seeing how with Creon on the one side, like he's still associating with his role, he still has high power and enjoying those riches, but there's a little bit of red showing through that, which kind of hints at his responsibility for the deaths and suicides of the other characters in the play. And then in terms of texture, I use that to show importance. So the texture of the tacks are obviously very pointy and harsh, showing like a violent relationship between him and Antigone, and there was really no give to that. And then also with the stick figures that are suffering from their very tragic deaths, I tried to show color with the blood surrounding them. And we see how one has a very kind burial, very properly put with the Chipotle napkins that I used. And then on the other side, we have Paul and Isis. This is very messy. There's still holes in it because it's still unfinished. And then going towards the bottom of the board, I was just trying to show how this area shows how quickly his rule is actually falling. I use lines in this to show entrapment and downfall. So the circle of tacks is used to show how he's basically stuck in this fortress of guilt for the suicides, as I mentioned earlier. And then I put broken toothpicks in the middle. If you've ever chewed on a toothpick, you know how in the beginning it's very fresh, pointy, and then as time kind of goes on, it tends to break down, especially if you mess with it, which kind of symbolizes his rule. And then obviously the knife represents the deaths, which kind of connects to this part of the board up here, so he's showing responsibility for the deaths and the suicides. And then the fuzzy paper over here is just kind of showing now everything's just kind of in chaos. There's no control. You can't really draw any connections to how he is as a ruler, and there's no structure to it. And then in terms of color for this space, I just kind of left it mostly white besides the deaths, because that's pretty much the only element that's left of his rule so far. He's kind of lost his sense of overall purpose, and there's really nothing left to it. And then in this bottom corner over here, another reason not to use child's glue, I have a contact lens with an X on it, and it shows how when you become blind to the things that matter, you tend to have a tragic downfall. So that is my concept board.